2,
1, 2, 3, 4,
4,
5, 6,
5,
7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah.
1, 2, 3. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. At this time, we'll be getting started shortly with the situational update.
Good afternoon. In D.C. We are in the city administrator for the district, Kevin Donahue, deputy mayor for public safety and justice, Lindsay Appiah, Rachel Pierre. So I am here today for providing a situational update on the go through many slides giving you a state for questions. I always want to remind people like any other place in America, not quite a city, county, and state, more than 700,000 of citizenship. We pay federal tax than most places, and we get back does not have a vote, and we do not have in the Senate. The district was but leaving the Congress and the of our budgets and laws. I just referenced also gives the President of the United States allowing the President to compel MPD services for federal with the federal government, our federal partners, while of excellent government services. Operations Center, at the time we called it an incident management to emergent situations. Our system is in Washington, D.C. So when we talk about the criminal justice system in D.C., it's not a local system. So unlike any state or city, our city ecosystem for public safety combines local responsibility and federal responsibility. As you see, the Metropolitan Police Department, the brave men and women who protect us, of course, our city government. The D.C. jail is where people who have been arrested are held pre-trial. The federal system includes supervision of people before they go to trial. The federal government and the United States Attorney is responsible for all adult prosecution. Youth prosecution is a local responsibility belonging to the Attorney General for the district. The courts are federally appointed judges. And then when we talk about detention and incarceration, DC jail will hold some people, and other people will go on to serve the remainder of their sentences at federal prisons in the Bureau of Prisons. We detain our youth with the DYRS. All of probation, both for adults and for youth, are a federal responsibility. I'd like now to talk about something you've also heard me talk about, and there's been some debate in our local press about what's happening with policing in DC and the number of police that we have in particular. So we wanted to give you a long view about where we are with the number of police, and we can talk a little bit about where I think we need to go. And Kevin and Lindsay, if you want to jump in to talk about the trajectory of policing, police hiring.
Sure. I'll talk about the long view, and Deputy Mayor Pia will sort of talk about the past few years. So this chart shows an arc that dates back about 30 years. The first portion, you see a steady rise to try to drive towards 4,000 officers. That was achieved in 2008. Then you see a period of about 10 or 15 years where it undulates up and down, often for different reasons. There was a recession in 2008 to 2010. Budgets were cut as a result, and you see the numbers slide down. Then a push to build it back up to 4,000. Then there was a retirement bubble, largely from folks hired 25 years prior in the late 80s, early 90s. So it slides down to 3,700. Then we put in place very specific hiring and retention strategies, and you see it go back up. It undulates back up towards 4,000. The difference now is that you see a departure from that trend up and down between 4,000 and 3,700 that you saw over the past 10 years. Starting in 2020, that began a steady decline. Part of this was a national trend where it was just more difficult to hire law enforcement. Part of it was the result of choices that we made in DC around the budgets in 2020, and subsequently around the laws that govern policing that would make DC and MPD a less desirable place to come if you're a young person considering that career and you have choices between where to become an officer, whether it's local or federal. And I'll have DM Pia talk in more detail about what we've seen the past few years.
Sure. So as the city administrator said, there's been a number of things that have affected our sworn staff, and we've, on the executive side, have worked to try and address those issues, because what the mayor has maintained is that we always say the path to 4,000, and so we believe we need 3,800 to 4,000 officers. And so some of the work that we've done in the past several years, you can see when we started to see more significant decreases, more attrition than those coming in, is working with council to rebalance our ecosystem towards accountability, because we know that certainly affects police as well. When people commit violent offenses, we say they need to be held. There's a lot of work that goes into actually effectuating arrests in the district, and so we want an environment where police know people will be held appropriately accountable. We also worked on rebalancing some laws that affected policing, the ability to pursue, the ability to what serious use of force looked like, to ensure that we were engaging in constitutional policing, but adjusting an environment that had become what we would say out of balance in supporting good constitutional policing. And so we made a number of those changes. We also instituted a host of incentives and across the board listening to officers what they wanted, from hiring incentives to new CBAs to retention bonuses to things like take-home cars, and a variety of incentives both to retain our officers as well as to invest in bringing new officers in the door, and also in growing our cadet program and building a local pipeline of people, young people, predominantly from our city, to bolster our numbers. And so we continue to do that work to stabilize and to increase our force strength to what we believe is where we need to be, 3,800 to 4,000 officers.
All right, so we wanted to show this slide, and you've heard me say, and I will continue to say, we need at least 500 new officers. To hire 500 new officers over the course of the next several years to have the number of officers that we need and to decrease the amount of overtime that we use. And so I want to move on to share with you, and I know that there have been data shared throughout this period, and this is a chart. It's been it shows, and this is the type of categories that the chief reports to me on a weekly basis about what's happening in crime in the district. We've highlighted the area in yellow that shows the impact of the surge of FBI, DEA, ATF, and Park and Capitol Police and other federal agencies in the district. And the federal surge has had a significant increase on crime in Washington, D.C. And we greatly appreciate the surge of officers that enhance what MPD has been able to do in this city. The most significant thing that we are highlighting today is the area of crime that was most troubling for us in 2023. Now, we have driven it down over the last years, but I'm going to get my glasses so I can make sure I can see it correctly. But for carjackings, the difference between this period, this 20-day period of this federal surge and last year represents a 87% reduction in carjackings in Washington, D.C. We know that when carjackings go down, when the use of gun goes down, when homicide or robbery go down, neighborhoods feel safer and are safer. So this surge has been important to us for that reason. I want to say that I have been personally engaged with Attorney General Bondi and the President's Chief of Staff, Susie Wiles, and I spoke with the President this afternoon. And I was reminded of our first meeting after his reelection, where we discussed shared priorities for the district. There, I was reminded that the President's interest in cities predates his time in office, and his knowledge of D.C. had significantly increased from the first time he was in the White House. And so we knew that the priorities around safety and investment in infrastructure would be on the President's mind. Now, since this surge has begun, it has been my charge to my team, especially the chief, to make sure that while we have federal resources, that we are strategically using them to enhance MPD's efforts and to make sure that we are getting the best outcomes for DC residents. While at the same time making sure that we're living up to our commitments to DC residents and protecting local control and our autonomy. So we'll say a little bit more about what has worked and what we think needs to change. But before we do that, we're going to say a little bit more about the beautification efforts in D.C. So let me first say how proud we are of our city and how beautiful and green our city is. When people visit our city, they comment on how green it is, how wide the avenues are, how many trees we have, how great our parks are. And it is an effort that we take great pride in as city officials. Our teams, of course, include DPW, DDOT, DGS, Parks and Rec, and our teams work with federal partners. The map you see, I think all of the red is federal parks, and like many things in Washington, there is a mix of local and federal responsibility, and the red spaces that you see are major federal parks as well as pocket parks throughout the district. The district over the last 10 years, I have had a significant effort on improving infrastructure, especially alleys, local streets, trees, lights throughout the district, and you can see the change over these last 10 years of roads that were in poor condition to roads that are now in good or excellent condition. We will, though I don't know much of the details, we will be supportive of the President's $2 billion request to improve infrastructure, especially federal infrastructure in the district. So I want to move on now to talk about homelessness and our efforts to help people who are experiencing homelessness, who are in encampments, or who are on the street. I wanted to share a little data about our experience over the last couple of years. We do a point-in-time count every year. This point-in-time count showed that just over 5,000 people were experiencing homelessness in D.C. Most of those people are utilizing shelter. We achieved a decrease from 2024, which was our first major decrease in 3 years since the pandemic. We've seen an 18% decrease in family homelessness and 4.5% decrease among single adults. Now, sometimes people are surprised when I make this statement, but it is a fact. We have a relatively small encampment problem in D.C. It, however, is highly visible. We spent a lot of time with our outreach staff at encampment sites trying to connect residents to services. It is among the most difficult human services issues of our time. Connecting people who are frequently have very significant mental health issues to services and getting them to voluntarily accept services. So you'll note that in January 23, this was the height, we think, of our encampment proliferation with 94 locations. By 2025, that was down to 74 locations. The number of people we believe were in those encampments at the height were 294 people, down to 128 people by July of 2025. So what we're doing now, there has been, and it is also our belief that our system can accommodate everybody inside. So this week, I think Thursday or Friday, we are going to do another census count of unsheltered people in D.C. That will give us an accounting of if any tents remain, where those tents are, the number of residents living there, and the number of people who may not be in tents but are still on the street. We want to know where they are so that we can connect them to services and get them to come inside. So I just want to wrap up by talking a little bit about next steps. Firstly, in the next couple of days, I will issue a mayor's order that spells out how our Emergency Operations Center will continue to engage with the federal Clean and Safe and Beautiful Task Force and ensure that task force resources continue to be strategically deployed in the district. This is what we think in just a couple of weeks of experience has worked. Having more federal law enforcement officers on the street. We think having more stops that got to illegal guns has helped. We think that there's more accountability in the system, or at least perceived accountability in the system, that is driving down illegal behavior. We know that we have had fewer gun crimes, fewer homicides, and we have experienced an extreme reduction in carjackings. What we know is not working is a break in trust between police and community, especially with new federal partners in our community. We know having masked ICE agents in the community has not worked, and National Guards from other states has not been an efficient use of those resources. What's still needed is in the city, we are going to continue to need more police. We continue to need more prosecutors, more judges, more effective prevention programs, and we need to ensure local control. We also know what has helped us in the last 2 years drive down crime numbers. We looked at the ecosystem similar to the changes we saw in the police numbers. And we advanced legislation, the council advanced legislation, but we know there's more to do. We will continue to work with the D.C. Council and the Attorney General on legislative changes that will promote more accountability. We will approve the police contract to retain our force strength and look for other ways that will help us recruit and retain high-quality officers. We will offer a hiring and retention bonus to help us shore up our path to 500 new officers, and we, of course, are focused on ensuring accountability throughout our system. There are other non-law enforcement things that we will continue to focus on to promote safety, including unifying our violence intervention programs, increasing the capacity of our homeless services programs, making sure we're providing more mental health services to youth and adults, and delivering a new residential youth treatment center. Now, while this isn't a work stream of the federal task force, we include it in all of our discussions, and that's how we recharge the district's economy. You have covered a lot the problem with the CR that caused us, the most recent CR that caused us to have to cut $1 billion from our budget, which in fact impacts our ability to quickly pay raises for firefighters and police officers. We are also very focused and working with the feds on stabilizing the federal workforce, accelerating land transfers where it makes sense, modernizing federal leasing, and other specific DC incentives that will promote our economic growth and recovery from many of the changes in our federal landscape. So that is a quick update, quick-ish update on where we've been in the last 2 weeks and where things stand. So with that, we'll be able to take a few questions. Let me get you, please. Thank you.
Raphael with Channel 9.
Yep.
Mayor, it says that there have been 2 questions. There have been more than 1,500 arrests. Can we make the distinction between, or how are we quantifying between a federal arrest or an MPD arrest? And then another question for Chief Smith. Chief Smith, I think we made it clear that there's a trust that's been broken because some of the lines are being blurred when people on the street see MPD and federal agents responding maybe to the same scene. Perhaps to you it's clear who's doing what, but to the community it's not. How do you build that trust after the surge?
So let me just answer the question on these data represent MPD and federal arrests, but maybe not all federal arrests. Okay? And Chief, you want to talk about Crest?
Sure. Just the second question with regard to building community. We've come a long ways, I believe, here in the District of Columbia with police and community. We know that there is some work for us to do once the surge ends. We need to make sure that we are in our communities again. We're still there. We're still working with our community, and we're still creating, if you will, a space where we can have Q&A and answers with regards to our federal partners. We have worked with our federal partners. This is nothing new. We just have an enhanced presence, right? One of the things that I shared maybe a couple of weeks ago is that we have been specific in the locations where we would like for our federal partners to support us in with respect to those areas where we've seen a little bit of high crime. And we've placed them there in those locations with us to support those efforts.
Yep. Right here. Mm-hmm.
Good afternoon, Felicia Ashley, ABC7. In talking with Community and Interactions, the Joint Task Force just sent an update yesterday that MPD made a request to have Joint Task Force staffing at certain metro stations as it relates to where school areas are at the start of school. Can you elaborate on what that partnership will look like and also your intention and hope behind that request as well?
So with respect to the metro stations, I think that's really Metro Transit because I don't have oversight over the metro stations. With regard to having a federal task force available to us, when we do see surges and spikes in crime, it will certainly be helpful for us. We know that our federal partners work with us when we have various operations, or some folks like to call them takedowns around the city, very complementary in that space. And the expectation is that we will continue those efforts and hopefully have the opportunity when we want to conduct different operations or different surges, we can call upon them to be able to support us.
Yep. I'll get you in a second. Yep.
Madam Mayor, give thanks. In your conversations with the president, what assurance did you get that he would not attempt to go beyond the 30 days?
That was not something that I discussed with the president, but with the Attorney General Bondi, and we will continue to work on how our Emergency Operations Center and the Federal Task Force can work together. Yep.
Earlier this week, activists were out front of the D.C. courthouse during arraignments that lasted well into the night, about 100. My understanding is a good portion of them were no-papered. I just wanted to get your thoughts around that, just seeing as though police are arresting people.
Yep, that's a great question. We don't have any information around what the courts have done or what the U.S. Attorney has done. We just don't have that information available for this briefing, but I do think it's important to understand.
Mayor?
Yes.
Could you respond to the plan by the federal government, the Department of Transportation, to take over the management of Union Station?
Well, the federal government owns Union Station, and I think that I don't know the details of what will happen. If it's just about management, that I would consider that step one. If it's about what Union Station needs for its total transformation, that would be an amazing initiative for the federal government to take on. I have had a very early conversation when I visited the president during his most recent transition about Union Station and how that could represent a very significant and good investment for this region.
Mayor?
Yep.
Hi, Tom Fitzgerald from Fox 5. We've seen some remarkable scenes from the people of Washington, D.C. over the last couple of weeks, reacting to the situation, dealing with the situation. The protest in front of the courthouse was mentioned. When you've looked around the district, what do you have to say about how the people of Washington have reacted over the last couple of weeks?
I think D.C. residents are being, what I would expect from D.C. residents to be very focused on autonomy, local control, and their neighbors. So I think D.C. residents are very concerned about each other, and they're very concerned about their rights as Americans. So, yeah, I think D.C. residents are defending their city, they're promoting their city, and they are giving me ideas, talking to me, and trusting my judgment. Yep.
Chief Smith,
Randy Bass with DC News Now. Can you speak to any kind of hesitation that we might be seeing in the community when it comes to working with not only MPD, but working with federal law enforcement, creating that community connection, and any kind of hesitation when it comes to seeking out emergency services right now?
Well, what I can say with our communities, our team is still working. We're still doing community outreach. We're still having the programs and initiatives that we typically had prior to the surge. I mean, clearly there is some hesitation, obviously, with some of our community members, which is very important to me that my team, myself, that we are educating our communities on the relationships that we have with our federal partners. Again, I'll emphasize that the relationships are not new, right? It's just an enhanced presence. And what we want to do is to make sure that we're educating our communities, community members, on how to engage with law enforcement when they come in contact with law enforcement for any reason. And we still want our community to reach out to us, right? Because like I said, you know, MPD, the Metropolitan Police Department members are here. They're doing a fantastic job every single day in the community, and we want our communities to continue to have that trust with us when it comes to different type of activities that's going on that we need to know about.
Now, if I could just add on to that, like, we don't know who's not calling, but we do know a lot of people are calling. And on that data sheet, which now I can't see, so.
Yeah, so you'll notice on the data sheet it has calls for service, which in fact have increased during the surge. One of the things that we know about DC residents and visitors is that we're the fourth busiest 911 center in the country, right? While our population is not necessarily the fourth. So we encourage people to continue to call, continue to call or use 311. And that MPD continues to be our primary, this is our local police department that responds to calls for service. And so for those who feel hesitancy, although you can see our mokers and everybody, for those who feel hesitancy, to continue to encourage it.
And then recently said that he doesn't think that is necessary. Do you think this 30 days?
What we want is local control that work in coordination with us, DEA, work with us on major crime issues all the time with them, and they have been helpful in the field.
So do you think this is going to end after 30
officers? We want to enhance our officer presence.
Comer sent a letter to you recently asking for all kinds of 7 MPD commanders. Are you cooperating with that? How is that? Great. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yep.
For the mayor, control over Union Station would be a good thing.
They own Union Station. A good thing because that station has suffered from $1 billion, but let's call it at least $8 billion worth of not something that the district will be able to support. It's a asset for the Eastern Seaboard. It's an important for the federal government to make the necessary investments.
Plan to make those investments?
I don't. It's not in any current budget. Familiar with the plans. It has suffered from not being a. Yep.
Just two questions. Scott Gemmell with WTOP. The President's conversation regarding city roads, medians, infrastructure. all be sure that MPD officers wouldn't be making the arrests that you?
Can you give me that last question again?
Sure. Just how could you be sure that the federal law enforcement search?
Well, we know, and I'll turn to some additional deployments that could have been made. Officers, that same activity arrests. That's it. That's it.
The infrastructure, roadway.
High-level conversation, and I wouldn't say it's any.
Thank you, Mayor Bowser. Joe Khalil with News Nation. You've said Congress for D.C. He has said he expects those projects. That timeline is accurate. If it is, do you expect there will be some kind of that?
I have no idea what the projects are. Other type of projects they take long, but of projects.
And you've acknowledged here that some of the there are
surge
in the
federal search.
There also for potential National Guard presence. A lot of accept the Guard or federal resources as this happens.
I'm the mayor of Washington, D.C. My comments relate to Washington, D.C. Have a different relationship with the federal government. So that's different. So I wouldn't comment or extrapolate. We are dealing with. And what was that your whole question? Okay.
The New York Times. Chief Smith, and y'all kind of answered this if you you know, you hear a lot of folks in some of these neighborhoods who feel that they don't recognize them, they're not local police. You're being done or exactly what MPD has been and you have worries of what effect it might have on communal trust going forward.
Anything, there is some concern, and especially in this case where to make sure we have the Metropolitan Police Department officers aligned with our federal partners. Community wanted to see more traffic in various communities, and so what we've done has been very strategic and thoughtful. Making sure that in areas, I'll just use for an example, like the traffic safety compliance check. Officers are not conducting traffic stops, and so we initiated the traffic. Can educate folks about traffic and traffic safety. Number one, of our street if guns are present, and then number two, making sure that our laws. And so I don't think we're doing anything any different in that space. Surge, if you will, of police officers, and we'll continue to do that if We've heard from our community, and when we've looked at our own data and we'd like to see that reduced. And what you've seen over the last 2 weeks, so officers supporting us in that area.
More detail, and I'm wondering from the slide if we can pull up the data chart again. We'll have copy it's read well. So when we look at in any circumstance that we and other people compare crime now to period of time in the prior year. The reason for that is that crime can be seasonal. You see the most traditional comparison that we have, which is last year. And so you see fairly precipitous declines, particularly if you were to go to MPD's website and look at crime cards and look at violence reduction in crimes involving a gun, when we look at the period of time now, how else do we look at it? So if you look at to the right of the slide, you see, well, let's compare to the 20 days prior. And the way to read those numbers had good momentum coming into the federal surge. Let's sort of look at the violent crime, the very far right. We've seen during the surge, you see it tick upwards. And the most significant manifestation of this we really see in carjackings, which is can be targeted quite randomly. And that's where we've seen the largest impact of nearly a 90% change when we look at what's happened. That's for the totality of that slide.
Okay.
Said Mayor Bowser better get her act straight or she won't. And what he told you as to what to expect in the future.
Mark, let me say we had a following a substantive meeting with the Attorney General, who is his designee on this. I'm not going to talk about the details of that conversation. And you have seen what I have laid out in terms of the benefit. Huge number of federal law enforcement, not national, NPD's deployment capacity.
Did you push back about law enforcement agents not wearing name tags?
Mark, I'm concerned about. Give you like a rundown of every word that was said in the meeting. They're very concerned about. We are working on a resolution for.
On that, on how many people have been detained, and are you tracking
Any information on anybody who and I am concerned for sure federal partners to do is focused on violent crime. Sorry, I don't know who's speaking. Okay. Okay.
Tensions within covering families who are losing their due to the immigration enforcement. What can you tell us, and what can you tell?
I'm devastated by people living about the Congress establishing a pathway for a better life, and who are not criminals, who are be answered. That's the only way to these agencies going after. Yep.
Thank you. Olivia George with the Washington Post. Rule Act, what specific requests have been made for MPD services?
Wouldn't be able to enumerate them here, but we do have
And one for Chief Smith related to what was just asked. Enforcement.
We are supporting the ask of the Metropolitan.
Yep.
Mayor, thank you. Josh Chapin to Channel 7. Unfortunately, the federal government that we're counting days without homicide, it doesn't matter. Unfortunately, whether it's MPD officers or federal troops going into a place in weeks. Is that on the docket? Is that on
deployment, Chief?
Yes, we do have officers deployed in all of our areas and with at various locations around our city where we were seeing a
National Guard? Is it worth the National Guard going in there or directing them there?
with respect to that.
Okay, we'll be able to take it. Did you get one? Oh, okay.
Chief, I just wanted to go back to something you said about things that residents were asking for. Traffic stop. No resident said we want a traffic stop followed by a guy asking of a strategic use of MPD resources and pretty dramatic ways, specifically targeting a community that has now that if they call MPD, ICE is coming with them.
And I do understand the concerns here in the city and community members. However, I also in communities, and clearly what I will say about the members of the Metro, every member to ensure that we're showing up in our communities as we have is that they will continue to do that. My oversight is or any concerns that members in community have with respect to that there's a space and a place for them to report that.
And just to follow up on that, the president wants to do with the district, one thing he said in this executive order is general orders, the way that police officers are told to operate. Now, MPD doesn't have to push back. Mayor Bowser, when would you push back, and what type of request would you push back on? And standards on uses of force. I want you to allow more pursuit.
I think all of those things you mentioned seem kind of happen. Nothing has happened in that regard. The request happened. Of requests. Yes.
Mayor Bowser, this morning there was kind of a volatile situation. Conducting an operation and being surrounded by in their faces with, according to what we saw, MPD officers trying to. How concerned are you about an escalation in?
Well, I feel strongly that DC residents in a way that is lawful. Yes.
Apprehension unit, which oftentimes throughout the course of a week case, they were doing what they would typically do any other day. Come out in the neighborhood. We were able to maintain calm. The numbers of protesters decreased, and we were able to
Okay, yes, I'm going to take a couple more. 1, 2, 5. All right.
Hi, thank you. Fabiana Rincon with El Tiempo Latino. Can you provide an update on DC's status as a sanctuary city?
Law is in place. There's been no change to the law. If you
Chief Smith's order with collaboration, does that impact the execution of the
suspects outside of
or collaboration outside of custody?
We're still doing that.
The DC Police Union supports this federal. Until the Police Reform Act is, they believe that police officers don't want to come work here because of what the council did.
a number of pieces of legislation to see what should be tweaked or replaced. They are interested to make any changes. Yep.
The response to the House Oversight Committee now investigating the alleged manipulation of DC crime statistics. Do you have a and can you tell us the status of your own investigation into that?
About the earlier question, we'll answer any questions that are posed. Investigation. Yep.
Doing the emergency count, is there a concern that people have been arrested?
I think our concern is that people have moved around the district. We think that, well, we know that about 81 more where they came from. They could have come from encampments. So we
Of that be shared with the federal government, and is there any concern that they could use that to then?
We don't expect that we're going to have homeless encampments, and we are going to work to
add some of the purpose of doing the point in time anecdotal stories about people believing that there are changes, and there may be encampments. Have they moved from downtown core to neighborhood? It's an attempt to cut through the anecdote and really get a focus on homelessness in addition to additional shelter capacity. What is the numbers really? Haven't done a point in time count. There's no names collected. It is really
Survey or just counting?
just counting. Okay. Yep.
Hey, Mayor. That are described ranging from tension to a sinister feeling like a horror movie. Say to those residents who are having these feelings even as they try to go about their normal lives.
Qualified to answer that question because I know there's a lot of when I look at neighborhood chats, I know that there's a lot of writing. So I know that there's a lot of anxiety, but I also know able to pay the bills or pay their electricity bill or supplies versus what I spent this year. So there's a lot role or that of my constituents is different in advancing and protecting our democracy.
I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about an estimate about how much is federal. Is there support from local agencies?
Over time, and so I don't know that we're going to have a distinction with this surge or not as it relates to our operations center, and I didn't get a chance to introduce Clint. SEMA acts as our incident command for this new structure. Yes.
The Attorney General Pam Bondi about the 30-day time period at that time. Could you expand on that conversation at all?
But we will be prepared to take to support the federal task force.
Mayor, nice to meet
to nervous Hispanic workers?
I said, Carlos, that the answer, you are like almost, you feel like you're being caught up in a dragnet. And that is horrible. And to the extent that there is enforcement in this town that does not have, let me just say, we should be focused, all these additional federal resources on violence. And that is what my hope will continue to be. And I would just express to them as a neighbor how very sorry I am that they're living in this terror. Okay, thank you, everybody.